I got so used to being the only woman in the room, I didn't even notice it anymore. Did you know that only 31% of sales leaders are women, even though 50% of the sales reps are women? I'm Amy Evans. After 25 years of sales leadership in corporate America, I help B2B tech and AI CEOs hit their number as a sales strategy advisor. I also host the Women in Sales Leadership podcast, where you'll learn what it takes to lead at the highest level, withstand the pressure to deliver the numbers, and elevate your career without losing yourself. No fluff, just the real stuff of women in sales leadership. If you aspire to become a CRO, vice president, first-time sales leader, or start your own business, you're in the right place. You are going to want to stop right now and click follow so you don't miss the episodes that drop every week. Welcome to another episode of the Women in Sales Leadership podcast. Today we have a truly inspiring guest, Wendy Leggett, owner of Conflux Retirement Coaching. Wendy shares her journey from high school boutique sales to becoming a sales director at a major telecom company and ultimately transitioning into retirement life coaching. In this insightful conversation, Wendy dives into the challenges of being a female sales leader, the importance of authenticity, and the power of embracing transitions throughout our careers. We also explore the concept of positive intelligence and learn practical techniques to boost our mental well-being, reduce stress, and lead with empathy. Whether you're in leadership, aspiring to grow into leadership, or preparing for a meaningful retirement, this episode is filled with wisdom that will resonate deeply. Tune in and get ready to lead with clarity, confidence, and conviction. Hi, Wendy.
Hi there, Amy. How are you?
I'm excellent. I am so glad to be here with you. And thank you for joining me today. I was really thrilled to get the chance to meet you when we met a week or so ago. And you shared with me a little bit about you, what you've done in your life, and what you're doing now. And I'm really thrilled about our conversation that we're going to have today. And I was hoping to kick us off, we would start at the very logical spot, which would be the beginning for you. Tell me if you don't mind, introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about your.
I'd love to. Yeah, and it's been such a pleasure to get to connect with you as well. Your energy and insights are just really inspiring to me. So I'm Wendy Leggett. I'm the owner of Conflux Retirement Coaching. And my story is that I've been in sales for most of my career. Even in high school, I'd gotten a job at a boutique. I loved the fashion, of course. I loved the discount. But then I really loved the process and I loved the connection with customers. I did really well. And, we know that when we're in sales and we do well, oftentimes we get promoted. So I moved up the ladder when I was in high school into college, went to a large store. Maybe people know Nordstrom. So I was there for quite a few years. But then I made the decision that I wanted to, at that time in my mind, move into something more professional. So whatever that means. And so that meant going to outside sales. And so then started off with a large telecom company and worked my way up that ladder too. So the last position I had before I then stepped out for a little while to have my children was as a director of sales. Had a lot of people reporting to me, had a lot of distributors and call centers reporting to me as well. And so it was a very dynamic, creative position. I made a very emotionally based, not well thought out decision. Amy, when we had our twins, I had planned to go back to work again, but then one of them became ill and he was fine afterwards. But at that moment, my heartstrings pulled me and said, you need to be home with your 3 children because we had an older son too. So I stepped away from that career, which was really such a gratifying, exciting one to me, but I felt that this was the right place for me. And then flash forward, I got back into sales, but as we know, and maybe this isn't the case for everyone, but for me, it was kind of starting over again, and then working my way up. And so I tried a number of different avenues. The last position that I was in, I was a director of a number of franchises, director of sales. I loved that work, loved the owners of the company. But what happened there is that we were doing so well, very dynamic, creative. We were really breaking barriers in the way of sales and service. They decided to sell the company, which, was fortuitous on their part because it was a great time for them to do that. But for me, it ended up then bringing in a new owner with very, very different philosophy than the previous owner and very different values than I was aligned with. So fixer that I was, I kept trying to figure out a way to make it work. But ultimately, we know that we're in sales. We're facing our customers every day. We're working with our team members every day. And if we're bringing something forward that's not authentic or ring true to us, it's a very hard thing, a very difficult pill to swallow. And it wasn't one that I could. So I was at a crossroads then. Do I go back into looking for another sales position? But at that time, I thought, maybe this is an opportunity for me to dig a bit deeper. And I think I was really searching. And what I found then was moving into the career that I'm in now. So shall I dig into that, or because I know
why not? Absolutely, we're here. Let's do it, please.
Yeah, very good. So I was researching all kinds of different options. I hit upon coaching, which was new in my universe. In the different jobs I've been in, we'd had consultants, we'd had maybe really niche coaches, but I didn't really think of them in terms of coach, certainly not life coaches. But I decided, wow, that really resonates with me. I'm feeling like I want to dig a bit deeper. Sometimes we learn the things that we need for ourselves, as well as me wanting to bring that forward for others. So I went back to school, which was in and of itself kind of revolutionary because I hadn't been in school for a long time. And so went back to school, got my professional certified coaching credential through the International Coaching Federation and Coach Academy. And then through my travels, really started feeling like, I really connect with the kind of client who's me. In that baby boomer generation, the one that's really looking at, what's meaningful to me now, what feels like it's right and authentic and something that I can really feel like I'm making a difference around. So I did find out that there was something called retirement life coaching. There's associations, there's credentials. So I went back and received several credentials. And that's the work that I focus on, is helping people transition from career to retirement in a way that feels fulfilling, that allows them to really have a crystallized view of what this next chapter could look
like. Okay, well, thank you for walking me through that. I'd love to learn just a little more about what the work of retirement coaching specifically. Can you share?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you for asking. So my focus, and it's an important qualifier, is that I focus on the non-financial. So it's, very important, fundamentally important that people have their financial house in order. But we know that we bring our whole selves into retirement. And so if we only look at having our finances healthy, but not the rest of us, our emotional, our mental, our physical, our social, our feelings of purposefulness, if we don't have those healthy as well, then we can walk into retirement not really prepared to make the most of the next chapter.
Hey, I'm pausing the show for a moment to make a request. Please take 2 seconds and subscribe, follow this show in whatever app you're listening to it on. And if you really want to be generous, you could also choose to take another 2 seconds and leave a star review. It will go a long way to making sure that this show gets in the hands of listeners just like you who need to hear these stories and want to make a difference. Thank you, and back to the show.
Most of the next chapter. So the work that I do is really first raising people's awareness about what does retirement even mean to you? Because, oftentimes like 90% of the people in America plan to retire, but why? What does that mean to them? I'm a retirement life coach, but it doesn't mean that I think everybody should retire. I don't have any plans to retire right now. But yet, if someone is wanting to, or they're thinking about it, or they think, wow, that's the goal, is to retire. Well, what is it that you're retiring to? And what is it that you're retiring with? So we start there. And then from there, we really look at, okay, so this is how we define retirement. What do we envision? What will a day in retirement look like for you? If you didn't have this time abundance that will be offered to you when you are post-career, how will you spend that time? What will feel meaningful to you? What will get you up in the morning and make you feel like it's making a difference? Because we know when the honeymoon wears out, which is generally 6 months to 2 years in after retirement, people start to really question, wow, is this all there is? Or they get into these patterns that just kind of, perpetuate what they were doing at work. So many people will fill up their dance card and stay really busy because they feel like they're losing relevance. And so it's important that people then have that opportunity, and they do that with me, is to really start to crystallize, what does this look like for me? And then how does that align with my values? Because we know that when we're clear on our values and we have actions that support those values, then we move forward in a much more motivated way. So we go through that process and look at what feels purposeful to us. And purpose, in and of itself carries so much weight for people. What is my purpose? Finding purpose. But we know that purposeful is really a verb. It's an action, and we can have a number of things in our lives that feel purposeful. So we look at that, and then we go through and look at all the elements of well-being. So we do look at the physical, the social, the mental, the emotional, and the purposefulness or spiritual aspects of retirement well-being.
Thank you. Thank you for walking through that. I'd like to back up a little bit.
There was a lot there.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. It's wonderful. So I'd like to kind of take you back in time to when you were a sales leader, and when you first became a sales leader, Wendy, because you spoke fondly. I could hear it in your voice. You've had some good experiences. I mean, I think that's everybody's story. There's going to be great experiences, going to be all other experiences, which we might think of as our learning experience.
That's how I term them as well. Yes.
Right. Right. Tell me a little bit about when you first became a sales leader. What surprised you most, and what did you enjoy most? Since that's who our audience is today. Walk me through a little bit of that, please.
Yeah, I think for me, it was like this beautiful melding of creativity and commerce. So it was this idea that we could be thinking really creatively about how to meet our clients' needs and how we could meet and exceed our numbers. And at the same time, really be having fun and being able to put ourselves forward. And so I think that's what I found as being a leader, because I was able to help chart the course then. I wasn't, in this position where I was really able to make more of an impact. So as that leader. And so that's what I didn't realize it would feel that way, but that's what I recall from it.
Yeah. And talk to me a little bit about what that was like to be a woman in leadership at that point in your career. Did you have very many other female sales leader, models or folks to look to or learn from?
Yeah, I was reflecting on that thought. And, for me, and this takes us back because, again, I'm in that baby boomer generation. So when I was in sales leadership, the women that were sales leaders around me, unfortunately, I think at that time, we were really having to act more as men. We were having to bring forward that male energy and not really be able to springboard off of all of the things inherent in being a female. I think there's a beautiful balance that can happen there. But I think that what I observed a lot was that there wasn't women lifting one another up or supporting them necessarily. I saw a lot of more kind of aggressive behavior rather than assertive behavior. And so the models that I was able to really look to were outside of sales. And I think that at that time, maybe it was just that interpretation that in order to make the numbers or in order to really excel, then we had to downplay some other aspects of who we were. And that's what I kind of observed. And even up till not so long ago, I worked for a sales leader she was younger, which I shouldn't even say that because that wasn't the point. She was younger in the position though. Yeah. So she didn't have a lot of experience. We know, at least from my experience, oftentimes when someone's an excellent salesperson, they get promoted. They are moved into a sales leadership role. And sometimes they don't have the tools, or sometimes they don't have the experience or the preference of really taking in a different view. And so they take all of their sales expertise and acumen and they move it forward into what they think of as a leadership role. But I think of that as more as a management role. And there's a big difference there between being a manager and a leader. So I did see that kind of behavior as well, where there just wasn't that kind of attention to those that were working for you and helping enable them and empower them and inspire them to then move forward in doing the business. So that was kind of my experiences. I found the role models really outside of the sales.
I don't think you're alone in that. I think that was absolutely a norm. I experienced that myself with some of my most beloved leaders that I looked up to that were women. It was so normal at the time, or it felt like that was what was the expectation. You had to be a guy, be a man, a woman who was kind of trying to be like a man at that point, because that was somehow what was acceptable. Thankfully, things have evolved a bit for us since then. But it wasn't that long ago. It really wasn't.
Yeah, and probably depending on the industry or depending on who is in the hierarchy, I think it's important to raise that up so that I think whenever things are normalized, when like for your audience to know that if this is what's happening with you, this isn't out of the ordinary. Hopefully it's a lot more out of the ordinary than it was, but to recognize it's not you. So then what's needed to be able to move you forward
Yeah. I mean, I have to say, I think I had moments in my leadership development where I was the only woman in the room. And so who were my role models? These wonderful, powerful, successful gentlemen, but their style wasn't my style. And it took me a while to understand that I had permission to add myself into my leadership style and subtract the parts of me that the things I saw that weren't me. And that's when I finally gave myself permission to do that, is when my own leadership started to grow and develop.
And if I may on that, sorry, but where did you find that strength of self? Because again, I think this could be a crossroads moment for some. And so maybe you have some insights around that to share.
Oh gosh, well, thank you for the interview question for me. So where did I find the strength? I think it was really more about, you can only subdue your own self for so long until your true self really just kind of comes out. It's like your personality is showing. You better tuck that back in. I think one of the beautiful things that's happened over the last decade or so is that permission for all people, including women, to express themselves authentically. And I will tell you that there was one moment that sticks out in my mind where I was leaving a job that I had where I'd had a fantastic run. I'd grown a lot as a leader and made lots of mistakes, but learned a lot along the way. And I was transitioning out of the organization, and one of the gentlemen that I was working with said something to me that it's funny, I'll never forget. And it was, Amy, be yourself. Just be yourself.
Yeah. That's to hear someone say that to you, because we know that we should feel that way, but oftentimes we fight it. We think that we need to fit into a certain box or carry a certain label. And so we do hold ourselves in the shadows. And I think that's why the work that I do with retirement rings so true to me, because I think especially generation to generation, there are some of us who were raised with pushing those emotions down or pushing them away. And so we're not leaning into ourselves. We're just powering through, and then no pain, no gain. And you just get it done and just keep moving on and moving forward. So for you to be able to sit in that place and say, just be myself, that's huge. I think that needs a real spotlight, because I think so often we don't allow that. And yet that's where the real strength, and that's where the authenticity and the uniqueness can shine through. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. So this is a natural transition to something you and I talked about when we first met, and it got me very excited, Wendy, and that was, you talked about something that I'd never heard anybody share about before, and that was positive intelligence. Can you talk a little more about that, please?
Sure, I'd love to. I think most of you listening probably have heard of emotional intelligence. And so we know then how we want to relate to people in different arenas and settings and things so that we're able to really collaborate and communicate and come to agreements. Positive intelligence takes that same concept and it both boils it down to a very simple level. And at the same time, it becomes oftentimes more actionable because when things are simple, we can oftentimes put them into play. So the concept of positive intelligence came from Shirzad Chamine. So Shirzad Chamine is an author. He developed this concept, wrote a book called Positive Intelligence, and then took it several steps further, where he then put a program behind it. And what he shares in his positive intelligence is that we have these three factors that allow us to recognize when we have a negative emotion. He calls them our saboteurs. And the lead saboteur is a judge. We judge ourselves, we judge others, we judge circumstances. And along with that judge saboteur are their accomplice saboteurs. So we may feel that there's an avoider that's chirping in our ears and saying, I can't do that. Or a pleaser, that I should act a certain way so that people will like me. Or a victim saboteur, I would do better in this job except that, etc., etc. So we have these saboteurs, and we all have them. Some are louder than others. Some have been around a lot longer than others. But at any rate, we recognize them when they come up because we start to feel these negative or difficult emotions. So the key behind positive intelligence is, first of all, catching those saboteurs, saying, whoa, I know what you're doing and I'm not listening to you because that's not who I am. So I'm not a hyperachiever. I have a hyperachiever characteristic sometimes that pushes me beyond what I should maybe be doing or that is best for myself or others. So we catch the saboteur and then we go into what's called self-command. And for some, they might think of this as like a little mini meditation, but the idea is just quieting our brain for a moment. We caught the saboteur, we're stopping. And we're reflecting. And there's ways to do that. We call them PQ reps, and I can step you through that. And then we move into what's called SAGE. So we've had this time of reflection. We see that that negative emotion is working against us. And so then we move into the positive emotions, which are the SAGE characteristics. It's when we activate our empathy powers, we activate our navigation powers, innovation powers, those types of things. And so then we move out of that negative space and move into this positive one. It's a very, very powerful approach. I know that I'm kind of synthesizing it here, but the core behind it is that it's really a lifelong practice for us to catch these saboteurs, quiet them, because we know that if we keep, as Shirzad would say, our hand on the hot stove for more than a second, that we're going to get burned. And so, yes, we can recognize the negative emotion. Feelings are critically important, but they're a signal. Something's amiss. But instead of ruminating in them or acting in a saboteur sort of way, then we want to move into a sage position. What questions does that kind of bring up for you or thoughts?
Well, first of all, I am thinking I can hear in that description things that I actively experience on a sometimes weekly basis.
Oh, good for you, because mine are daily.
Yeah. Depends on which day it is. Yeah. So you shared a little bit, Wendy, about like a tool that you use. Is it something you'd be comfortable talking everybody through?
Yeah, sure. So this concept of PQs, which are using this positivity quotient, are a lot of different modalities, but I'm going to walk you through one. So let's say that you were coughing a little bit ago. And so you start to get this feeling like, oh no, I'm not going to be able to carry on with this. And so what we could do for a PQ is we could just take our fingertips. So take 2 fingertips and rub them together, if you would, with such attention to detail that you can feel the ridges in your fingertips and just give it all your attention. Can you feel those ridges?
I'm going to close my eyes so I can feel them better.
That's even better. Yeah.
Oh, I can feel it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're rubbing our fingertips and feeling the ridges with such attention to detail that that's all that we're really thinking about. And then if you stop and open your eyes, do you get in just that moment, like a little bit of sense of calm. I
Oh,
mean, of course, yeah, yeah. Because I mean, here we're chatting, so I recognize, but that's the idea of it, is that when it's a practice that we build. So even when we're not feeling a negative emotion, we catch ourselves during the course of the day, we take a little break and we go through PQs, and it can be with our fingertips. I love doing it with breathing. So I love breathing in and holding it and breathing out and just, calming my nervous system. We can do it when we're walking and we feel our feet on the pavement, and we just give our total focus to feeling those feet on the pavement. And what this is doing is it's just clearing our mind, because our minds, and I don't even, is it like 60,000? It's like some crazy amount of ideas, right, that are going through our head at any given time. But they're just thoughts. Our brains are pattern makers. They're trying to put all these pieces together, but they can get overwhelming, and they can close out the things that really deserve our focus, that are our priorities, that are the things that we're wanting to bring forward into the world. And so the PQs allow us to just clear that clutter. I call it little brain breathers, because it just allows that. And I use this one especially when I'm in meetings. And if a saboteur comes up like, hey, wait a minute, why are they saying that? For example, not that I'd ever do that, but so I just, under the table, I'm doing my little PQs, and it's almost like Pavlov's theory, where you're just like rubbing that brings to mind that calm, that laser focus. So that's what it allows for.
It's so simple and so easy in the moment to do. I love that can be done without anybody, right, noticing that you're getting really present back to yourself again and calming down and being in the moment again. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, we can even do it just looking at one another. If we really look in one another's eyes, if I do that unbeknownst to you, but I'm doing PQs looking at you, it can bring up that empathy power that I'm seeing in you, that beautiful spirit that you have, that oftentimes, gets veiled by the work that we're doing or the things that we're trying to accomplish. We stop seeing one another. So we can do PQs in that way too. All kinds of ways to make it happen. But the key is that we're learning to move our minds in a way that's positive. And the science behind it is this neuroplasticity, that we know that our survivor brain skews to the negative. It had to, stranger danger, making sure, that we were always safe. But it doesn't work for us any longer. It's not necessary. But yet that's how our brains work. Well, the science tells us we can now start to build those new neural pathways to the positive. And that's what this is all about. Over time, as we practice and we build it, more and more will we skew to the positive. So very powerful.
Extremely powerful. That's remarkable. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
So before we wrap up, I've got two more questions, and then we'll also get to people who want to maybe find out a little bit more about getting in touch with you. So if you're eager to get that, hang on a minute, where we will get there. Let's go back to thoughts or advice that you have for women leaders that might be listening to today's show, our listener. What's a piece of advice that you have for women in leadership, or women who may be considering taking the leap and applying for a role in leadership and moving into a leadership role?
I appreciate that question. I'm really big on the power of transitions. I'm really big on understanding where are we at right now and having an ending to a chapter before we move into a new beginning. And I think that this applies. Let's say you're in a sales position, you have this opportunity to advance in your career and move into a leadership position. Really recognizing, okay, I'm putting an end to this position, either a period or an exclamation mark or whatever. But what do I want to bring with me into my next role? And what do I want to leave behind? What patterns or habits, being really mindful that aren't going to serve me as I move forward? And what are the strengths and capabilities and passions that I have that I really want to bring to the forefront in this new position? So it's really giving ourselves that space and grace to have that ending, move into what's called the neutral zone, this time of reflection, maybe journaling, meditating on it, whatever allows you walking in nature to gain that clarity, use the PQs, but gain that clarity before you move into the new beginning. And the reason I share this is I didn't realize the power of transitions. I moved into a lot of different positions. I was so excited about them. I focused just on the new position. And I brought with me at times baggage or habits or patterns that really didn't serve me. They needed to be left behind. So that's one of the things that I would really want to spotlight for everyone is really give yourself that time around transitions. There's prolific work by William Bridges. He wrote a book called Transitions, and he does speak about you have to start with the end first. And so I really recommend that. And the other thing that I want to bring up, and this is for those that are planning for retirement, but it really is for your audience as well, is really being the leader of you. I call it the CEO of you. And so, again, before we can lead others, I think it's critically important that we are leaning into ourselves and leading ourselves. You spoke about it earlier when you said, just be you. Well, who are you? So really leaning into that and really allowing ourselves to really gain that confidence and gain that knowledge and gain that springboard to then into that next position. Those are two of the things I'd want to highlight.
Wow. I do like that. That's wonderful. Gosh, I'm sitting here listening to that answer, and I was reflecting on the times that I had transitions in my own career, and I did not give myself time to make that transition at all.
Etc. So it's understandable that we have that future focus as well. We want to, but let's just allow ourselves to put that ending first so that we're really clear that we're not bringing some things with us. Because looking back, I noticed that there were things that I had, and then we're not necessarily building off of confidence, especially if you're leaving a position that maybe there was some friction points for you or some tension. You could be building off of that as your foundation. That's not coming from that point of strength or empowerment.
Wow, that's so powerful. Absolutely. We'll do one last question, then I want to give everybody a chance to hear how to get in touch with you and how to find you, Wendy. And that is, the last question is, what's the one leadership lesson that you keep learning again and again?
The one leadership lesson that I keep learning again and again is really just, I guess it really is what you said about allowing myself to be me. I mean, I think that sometimes I really think I should be going in this direction or listening to this person or observing what that person's doing and emulate them, but not really then stepping back and saying, okay, but why? How does that relate to me? How does that align with my values and where I want to move forward? And that's both personally and professionally. So I think it's just doing that check as we go along and making sure that we're on the path that we choose. I say to those going into retirement that I want you to create a retirement by design, not default. And that's, I think, how I would want all of your listeners to think about whatever they're stepping into. Create it by your design, not default. You have that choice. And that's what I need to keep reminding myself of as well.
How will people find you, Wendy? How do we get them to you?
Yeah. So my email is, the name of my company, as I mentioned, is Conflux Retirement Coaching, and that's CONFLUX. So you can email me at wendy@confluxretirementcoaching.com. My website is confluxretirementcoaching.com. And if I may, I'd love to offer up a little mini workbook for retirement readiness. And even if some of your listeners aren't preparing for retirement right now, it may be something that someone in their life could benefit from, or it may be something that I think just having it in the stew pot, because 90% of Americans at some point in time are going to retire. At least they're thinking about it. And so I think having a runway to retirement is just vitally important. So in the show notes, maybe we can put a little link, and that little retirement readiness kind of allows you to go through a little workbook. And then if you'd like to contact me for a complimentary discovery call around what you found, obstacles or opportunities, I welcome that as well.
Oh my gosh, Wendy, that's awesome. I'm sure everyone will appreciate that. Well, my goodness, our time has gone by so quickly, and it has been very informative. And my I feel really just super calm after talking with you. You have such absolutely delightful demeanor. How fortunate your clients are to get to work with you. And I've just really enjoyed our conversation today.
As
Thank
did I.
you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure, and I wish you and I wish everyone listening the very best, much success, and that calm, because let's move off of the strength of the calm, because that gives us that clarity and conviction and confidence to move forward.
Right. Fantastic. Well, I'll put a wrap on this one, and we'll look forward to getting everybody the good information that you want to share.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Women in Sales Leadership podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us and share this with a friend. I'm serious. Stop right now and take a look at the app, whatever app you're using to listen to this episode on, and hit follow and share this with a friend. Send them a text. See if they would enjoy this show as well, learning all about and meeting women in sales leadership. Hey, and if you know somebody who is crushing it in sales leadership and should be on this show, reach out to me on LinkedIn, Amy Evans, or the Women in Sales Leadership podcast. I would love to connect. See you next time.